protocols, I mean, I have seen just so many different ones, and I always wonder, okay, well, how are we like quantifying like that an athlete is ready to return to play? And what does their conditioning look like? What does the load increase look like? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like people are just winging it. Like there's no
100%.
like objective data
Yeah.
for return
No,
to play. So I'm
there
curious what you do.
you're absolutely right. There is no objective return to play. You know, there was an article I came across that suggested that an athlete needed to do a single leg press to 90 degrees of knee flexion at 2 times body weight before they should jump, because vertical jumping on 2 feet, it has a load, like a mechanical load index of around 1.5 times body weight, but that's off 2 feet. And so the article suggested leg pressing 1.5 times body weight on one leg. I actually thought, I don't really know of very many athletes that can do that, regardless if they've ever had an ACL surgery or, a patellar tendon rupture or something like super catastrophic at the knee. And I worked with Canada Wrestling. And when I left Canada, I worked with some of the Americans before the like 2018, 2019 World Championships and into the 2021 Olympics. And I have girls that can front squat, 60-kilo girls that are front squatting 225 pounds. Like these are very strong athletes, some of the strongest female athletes I have ever worked with. And I know that they can't even leg press on one leg, 1.5 times their body weight. Like I'm not really sure where these standards do come from sometimes. I think there's just a disconnect and a lack of conversation between the strength coach, the sport coach, the physical therapist, and the medical doctor or the surgeon. Like I just don't think they're all in the same room talking enough or watching each other, work and offering solutions together, as a cohesive unit. It just sort of seems like a game of telephone, right? Where by the time you get to the end of the line, whatever was initially said is like not even close to that. And you probably have a few people along the way that messed with the story anyways. So yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I've seen some really wacky things with return to play on the conditioning front because,
Okay.
like you said, the physical therapist is not talking to the team coach enough. And that player could have run like 2 miles in practice that night, but the physical therapist only has them at another distance in the rehab program. So it's a complete mess as far as the load monitoring is concerned. So, are you doing anything as far as like the conditioning for return to play?
Oh yeah. It depends obviously on the stage that they're at. Um, and I am a bit unconventional. So with respect to conditioning, I know that cycling, like bicycle riding, is very common in like more of a clinical physiotherapy, physical therapist type approach. But as soon as I have an athlete that can hinge bilaterally with even pressure on both feet, um, they're doing kettlebell swings. So I actually have a protocol that I use. It starts at about, it depends on the individual. So I don't like to say weeks. I prefer to say stages or phases, but sort of anywhere between 3 and 4 months post op from a traumatic knee surgery are doing very high volume kettlebell swings in like an interval training program. It's low impact. You get a lot of hamstring work and you're not loading the knee, and then we can use just basic patellar knee, like knee effusion circumference, to monitor daily. So in the morning and at night, just to monitor swelling, after that type of training. So I do that. I also use a retrograde treadmill or hill if the person has access to a hill outside that's not slippery. um, Doing a lot of retrograde means backwards walking. on the hill to build the quads and to work through fuller ranges of motion through the ankle joint, as again, as opposed to just sort of sticking with the status quo of riding the bike. So I do those interventions quite early on. And then when athletes are strong enough to handle, sort of the dribble series that Dan Pfaff teaches at Altus, I have them do really high volumes of dribble series, like miserable amounts actually, leading up with medicine ball overhead. If you can do your dribbles, your gear ones and your gear twos with a medicine ball overhead for repeated 15-yard intervals, then they've now built some capacity to handle jogging. And then we would segue into jogging. So when I think about conditioning, I have them doing conditioning almost right from sort of the get-go, right from the beginning. I had one athlete, this is kind of a hilarious story. Poor guy, he gets his ACL repaired right around Christmas time. It's a depressing. The weather's not great. He's like, "Is there anything I can do to get my heart rate up?" And I said, "Yes. I'm going to give you a protocol that's absolutely ridiculous. You're going to hate me for it, but you're going to get your heart rate up." And so literally what I had him do, because he was still in crutches at this point, like he was literally maybe 5 days post-op, sit on the ground, sit on the floor, and then stand up on your non-operative leg. Sit back down on the floor, stand up on your non-operative leg, do a minute, rest a minute, do 5 rounds. Next day, do 8 rounds. Next day, do 12 rounds. And he basically did that for about, a week until he could start to waver a little bit on that leg. And then I suggested, you could even try, getting up from different positions. Use your upper body, almost like doing a single leg push up and then stand up. So we just called those get up, get downs. I've used them with athletes that have sprained ankles. So, we're in a group setting and they want to feel included. Because sometimes, coaches will have an athlete just go off to the side and ride the bike, right? You're going to attend practice, but you're not really at practice. You're just off in the corner riding the bike. And they don't feel like they can be part of something. But if the athletes are doing some kind of a conditioning session, you can modify things and have athletes do things on one leg if they need to. And I think that we just sometimes get so paranoid about following some kind of recipe that we lose our ability to be creative as coaches, and we forget that these are people that want to be included. They don't want to feel fragile. They don't want to feel left out. And we need to be better at coming up with solutions that maybe not conventional, maybe a bit silly, that at least give them a training stimulus. Have them sit on a chair or a stability ball and hit focus pads with boxing gloves on. There's a lot of things that we can do with kids or with athletes that are injured and healing that doesn't involve just riding the bike. Right? So,
That's
yeah.
brilliant. I love that drill, getting up on your non-operative leg as much as you can, and I just was having flashbacks to when I learned snowboarding for the first time, and you're
Okay.
constantly, like, falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up, and man, your heart rate is, like, through the roof, and
It's
that's
brutal.
conditioning in
Yeah.
itself. So, yeah, guys, it's really tough to do that, especially on one leg.
It's very